This is Dwight Woods, Jeet Kune Rebel. Welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues episode number 219 with yours truly. My dialogue partner today is a guy that I've known literally all my life. So I've known him even before he got involved in Jeet Kune. So hopefully he'll have something interesting to say today. So as you're logging in, if you guys would be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button. Feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. If you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, please visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, which is where you'll see stuff like this, the coolest ever t-shirt made. The 4 tenets of Jeet Kune, as I call it. If you ever hear anybody referring to the 4 tenets of Jeet Kune and talking about these statements, they got it from me. I can't trademark it, but they got it from me. So that's the. This is also available as a coffee mug and hoodie and long sleeve sweatshirt and all that good stuff. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune dialogues. All right, so I got a bunch of questions. I literally got a few of them like 5 minutes ago. So the dudette is on a trip, so I can actually spend not as much time because she has to call in. I can spend as much time almost as I want with you guys this evening, so we can see how this goes. So let me just take a quick look here at who is in the house. Number one, all the time, Terry Valor, Jesus Santiago, Russell again, the Russell Dulé from California, and Russell Fuson from Indiana. Mark Black, good to see you, and Anthony Labrador. All right, the usual suspects, right? Mark David Collins is here. Richard Torres, don't you have anything better to do at 6 o'clock on a Friday, or did you make special time for me today, Richard? Tony Stokes is here. All right, cool. Okay. All right, so let's get right into it. So Brooks asked if there are any new tools or equipment that I have come across that help me to teach and train Jeet Kune. So I can't really say that I've come across anything. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. It's just that as old school as I am, coming from a time when Sifu Inasano used to have to drag a duffel bag full of focus mitts like everywhere, probably even internationally, simply because that many people didn't own focus mitts as yet. That's like the era that I come from. And so in terms of equipment and what have you, like there's some stuff that I have seen, Brooks, that I think is pretty interesting, like grappling dummies. Like I think those are pretty cool, especially as they, Sensei Eric Paulson started with the Motion Master, I think he called it, but that was really just like a slab, with a kind of a human shape to it. But now there are dummies with limbs that you can manipulate and what have you. I think that's pretty cool. There's a thing from Century Martial Arts called the Versus Fight Simulator. So it's like a heavy bag that's sturdy enough for you to pummel, but then you can pummel as in kick, knee, punch, and elbow. But then it's light enough that you can take it down, right, and continue ground and pound with that. So I think that's pretty good because it enables you to go literally from stand-up striking to the takedown to ground fighting. I've seen, including you, Brooks, I've seen people using like maybe not the full wooden dummy, but like pieces of a wooden, like the arm or something, but which is not new. That's been around for a long time. But I think those are really cool for isolating certain techniques. And then Brooks, I've seen you modifying stuff or creating your own pieces, and I think that creativity where a lot of people have to make do with what is or what there is, what's available to them. I think that's really insightful. I couldn't find the magazine that showed. It was an article about this is years ago. Sifu Dan's what they call in the Filipino arts the cuerdas, and I think this is one of the first iterations that led to so many tire dummies being created. So his was had about 5 tires stacked vertically, and then you'd put metal rods to make sure that they didn't slip around, and then you could put a couple of the rattan staffs in on diagonal angles and then vertical, and so then you were able to hit all the angles of attack, but you could punch it and knee it because it was made out of tires essentially, so you could blend a lot of your striking with your hitting with the stick, but you could also use it for like sweeping and that type of stuff. Not all the way to the ground, of course, because it was too bulky for that. But there's one thing when it comes to equipment that I have seen that I need somebody to explain it to me. There are these like noodles, I think pool noodles, I think they call it, and I see people now slapping people with them, and then like the people punch back on them or what have you, and I don't really understand what that's about. But then one thing I really like to see is the what do you call it, the Thai boxing gear. Like, I mean, in the old days, right? So in the old days, before I came along, there were no Thai pads. That's why when you look at that block and shield, right? The yellow arm pads that you see in Way of the Dragon or what have you. That was like the first iteration, and then in the 1980s, we got exposed to Thai pads, and then the belly pad, as they call it, that came along, and now today we have the Thai pad, the belly pad, and then the thigh pads, right? So that really helps people to develop a flow in their technique and not have to, and like actually target the thigh instead of kicking the thigh pad, right? And you actually can go to the thigh itself. So that's a pretty cool development there in the Thai boxing world, right? So that's all that I could think of, Brooks, in terms of tools and equipment. But I really think that it isn't so much necessarily the equipment. Yes, the equipment helps, especially if you solo train. If you're forced to solo train, then you should have at least a heavy bag or something to hit. But I think if you have at least one training partner, I think people can develop really high levels of skill with just the essential pieces. It doesn't have to be anything necessarily fancy and what have you. I mean, it's cool. Like, I mean, if I show you pictures of my old academy, the amount of equipment that we had. But if you look at a modern school today, so like my friend Marvin Ishmael up in Canada, I think, and I mean, and I guess he's copying Sifu Francis Fong, you know, and Sifu Dan too, because, you know, you got 6 wooden dummies, you got 10 heavy bags and what have you. I mean, that stuff is really cool. But if we're talking about a couple of people that train together, you don't necessarily need all of that. You need a little bit of ingenuity, and you need a lot of heart and dedication to your training, and that's where the skill comes from, not necessarily all the fancy stuff, but the fancy stuff is so cool, it's not even funny, right? Okay, all right, so Mark asked about he was wondering how things would have gone if Bruce Lee had not met Jun Rhee, the Taekwondo master. So the little bit that I know about their relationship, I think it was I think that it was a mutually beneficial relationship because, and this is just my thought on it, Jun Rhee, ever the astute businessman, realized the benefit for him of being associated with Bruce Lee. As a businessman, Jun Rhee was an excellent promoter, right, of Taekwondo and what have you. And I think that it was very similar on Bruce Lee's end as well, that he realized that the benefit of associating with a guy who was so good at promotion. I think they both learned from each other. Now, when it comes to the martial aspect of it, you know, we hear that Bruce Lee trained and learned some stuff about kicking in Taekwondo from some Taekwondo kicking from Jun Rhee, but I don't know if it was like crucial to Bruce Lee's development in terms of kicking ability. It may or may not have been. I can't swear to that. I think Bruce Lee was a pretty decent kicker before Jun Rhee and before Chuck Norris, right? So I don't know that it was that big of a deal, but I think that they really enjoyed each other. Like if you read the letters between Bruce Lee and Jun Rhee, you can see that they really liked each other, and they had a huge deal of respect for each other. One thing that my favorite letter to Jun Rhee from Bruce Lee is the one where he's telling him about how to do his self-defense TV show. Like I love that letter because I think it shows a side of Bruce Lee, the businessman, that sometimes we in the Jeet Kune world we don't credit him with that, and we don't use that fact, the knowledge that Bruce Lee was not anti-promotion, right? Bruce Lee was not anti-business. We don't use that a lot in our own development. Moving right along. So Joseph asked, can you learn trapping hands without the use of, can you learn trap hands without the use, or do you really need chi sao? Okay, so I might have copied that wrong or something. So do you need to train chi sao in order to learn the trapping hands? Do you really need it in order to develop the sensitivity, or can the sensitivity be developed through just the trap? Oh, okay, now I understand. All right, okay. So if you use what we call the reference point, right? So made famous by Enter the Dragon. So we have the high outside reference point, we have the low outside reference point. If you use that and then you just copy the physical techniques, right? So we go Pak Da Gua Choi, right? And then maybe you go Loi Pak Da Gua Choi, you go Pak Da Gua Choi, you go Bong Sao Lop Sao, right? You can go through the physical techniques of it without ever feeling it. You see? So because you're able to copy the actual physical techniques. But you should train it in a way where, what am I trying to say? So yes, you can learn the trapping hands sequences, the simple ones, the single ones, the compound ones, the combination ones, whatever terminology you want to use for it. You can see them and copy them and never ever develop any kind of sensitivity. Never have that tactile facility. I think in order to develop the sensitivity, you need not specifically Chisao, but you do need some kind of what I call an energy exchange drilling. So you do need some kind of back and forth touching of hands. Whether it come, I did just it's fun. I don't know if Joe asked this question because of the two videos that I put up of Guru Ted Lukai and Jeff Imada. I put those up last week, right? This taken from his 1988 series, where they show what the heck was it? What did I put up? I forget. Oh, so, the rolling hands thing and the push hands thing, I think is what I put up. So I think you do need to develop sensitivity, some kind of energy exchange back and forth, almost counter for counter type thing, which is what Chisao is. But I don't know that you specifically need Chisao, because Chisao can be considered specific to Wing Chun. And then so if you're going to train Chisao, you need to train Wing Chun techniques, maybe not, right? But you can learn trapping hands without sensitivity for sure. You can just mimic the motions. Now here's one that I have no idea what the context is, and so I am not able to answer it. Kevin asked, what is the Grail question? Now, I don't know if because he put Grail question in inverted commas, so I'm wondering if he's referring to something that I said in a broadcast or dialogue or something, but I don't remember calling anything the Grail question. I think the only time that I've used when I use the term Grail in reference to Jeet Kune, it's when I say that when I talk about people who consider coming across Jeet Kune or coming across Bruce Lee to be synonymous with discovering the Holy Grail. But so I'm not sure, Kevin, what you meant by the Grail question. So if you could do a follow up on that, I can probably answer it in the comments for this dialogue. Billy Badass's brother Bucky asked, what is Kung Fu and why were Americans so amazed at Bruce Lee's demeanor as a result of knowing Kung Fu? So that one's not clear to me either, Bucky. Kung Fu with a G, which was a term that, well, okay, I kind of have to backtrack here because, let's see, the Kung Fu TV series with the K, more people are familiar with that spelling, that pronunciation, than they are with Kung Fu. It's really pretty much us in the Jeet Kune Do world who use the Cantonese pronunciation with the G because of our connection to Bruce Lee. Everybody else uses the K. And essentially the translation of Kung Fu or Kung Fu is not martial arts. That would be more like Kyushu or Wushu. There's no word-for-word translation. The interpretation into English of Kung Fu is kind of like skill acquired through hard work or something to like that. As far as Americans being amazed at Bruce Lee's demeanor as a result of knowing Kung Fu, I'm not sure. You mean as a result of their knowing Kung Fu, or being amazed at Bruce Lee's demeanor as a result of him knowing Kung Fu? That one I'm not too sure about, Bucky Badass. So you need to clarify that for me. And I'm jumping around here in my notes. Mr. Brown, Mr. Michael Brown asked, can there ever be a standard for Jeet Kune Do with so many, with so many so-called Jeet Kune practitioners lacking in the basic fundamentals, passing on their subjunctive interpretation of Bruce Lee, subjective, God, Dwight, not subjunctive, subjective interpretation of Bruce Lee's art. Can there ever be a standard for Jeet Kune with so many, yeah, well, so my question is, where do these many so-called Jeet Kune practitioners who lack in the basic fundamentals, where do they come from, right? And where is it that they are passing on their subjective interpretation? See, are they self-appointed? Because remember, unfortunately, in the JKD world, there are some self-appointed people. There used to be self-appointed people who actually went out and got the training to make themselves legitimate, but there are some self-appointed people who have not done that, and so they are illegitimate. But we have been living for at least 30 years? We've been living in a world where you can get on the internet and put yourself in front of the whole world, literally, and say whatever it is that you want to say about yourself. So I don't know that there's ever anything that we will be able to do about that in terms of getting rid of those type of people. But I think what we can do more and more of is to put quality Jeet Kune stuff out there, be it in the form of video podcasts. In fact, Anthony was telling me earlier today that he said something that that gave me an idea. So I will expand on this in an upcoming broadcast. But it is about how to counter the misinformation that's being put out there, right? And I may have said this before when Joe Rogan was talking to Guy Ritchie, and Guy Ritchie said, well, you pretty much can't avoid being in the game. So if you're going to be in the game, then you should play the game at the highest level that you can. You see? So it's one thing to sit back and B&M about what's wrong with the state of Jeet Kune and never do anything about it, right? Other than to B&M. Or you can set about doing something about it. You do your own part to right the wrong as you see it. That's always the solution. The solution is always action. You see, especially if you believe that you have a cure, an answer, a response, or whatever. The thing is always it's always action. So, but again, I think we need to identify where is it, because I see, you know what, I won't talk about it now. Okay, so let's, what else is there? So this was actually not for the today's dialogue. This is actually a personal question sent to me by a guy who was interested in starting some training with me here in Miami. So he said that he had gone to my website and that he had seen all the systems. Richard Torres is going to love this. That he had seen all the systems that he had seen, all the systems in which I offer training, right? Yeah, style hopping, as Richard would call it, right? So, and that's interesting because this guy has zero experience in Jeet Kune, and so I was actually glad for that feedback, because then I had an opportunity to explain to him that, and actually, if you read what's said there, there's nothing that says, here's all the arts in which I offer training. It doesn't say that on the website, right? But I think that people unschooled in martial art, if they start reading something, if they start reading information and they see this listed, that listed, whatever, 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 then they could start to think, oh, okay, so that must be all the things that are offered, because it's true, right? There are martial arts schools where if you look at the class schedule, you'll see BJJ at this time, and then Muay Thai at this time, and Kali at this time, and Jeet Kune at this time, and whatever, 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 whatever. Now, there was a time where at my school, you would see that. You would see what you didn't see, right? And this is, again, because I'm old school. You guys may have remembered, you guys might remember my saying this recently, that I was talking with my favorite Canadian JKD senior, Cass Magda, and we were talking about how in the old days, there was kind of like this idea that if you talked about Jeet Kune, that you didn't really get it, right? And so Jeet Kune was something that you, not that you, and I'm the last person who should be talking about Jeet Kune, right? Jeet Kune was not something that you talked about every few seconds or what have you. Jeet Kune was something that you did. Jeet Kune was something that you that you expressed, right? So people could look at you and you know, some would know that they're seeing Jeet Kune, others would not, right? It's a little bit esoteric, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. So when this guy mentioned to me, I explained to him that those things that are listed there are simply things that I pursued. I pursued knowledge in those things as part of my Jeet Kune journey. You see? And this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't get. The impact and the importance of the personal journey in Jeet Kune. Now, one thing that I've heard people saying about this personal journey is that the personal journey is what gives everybody their own version of Jeet Kune. And some of you will probably know that I've been on a little bit of a tear about that in recent times, because I do not think that there are different versions of Jeet Kune. To me, it's as simple as this. Everybody's an individual, and so everybody is going to do things a little bit differently, right? It's like Sifu Dan makes the analogy of you tell people, okay, you put them in an empty room, and you tell them, okay, decorate it however you want. And you could take twins, right? You could take twin brothers, twin sisters, or a brother and sister, whatever, people who grew up together, and you put them in those two different rooms, and there's no way that they're going to come up with identical furnishings in the room. So Jeet Kune is like that. A person's style is individualized, but you could all be on the receiving end of the same training in Jeet Kune, but the way you end up moving is not going to be just like your classmates. With the fun, this is an aside. When I was doing those video edits for the Ted Lukai stuff, there was a point, and I didn't even tell him this. I'm talking about this for the first time today. There was a point at which Guru Ted is on screen and he moves, and I swear to you, when he moves, I go, oh look, that's Blaze Lung, right? Okay. Now, if you know who Blaze is, and if you know his story and his background with Guru Ted, you will not be surprised by that statement. You see, but for a split second, I saw Blaze in how Guru Ted was moving. That's the influence of your instructor. But that doesn't mean that Blaze now ends up with his own version of Jeet Kune Do, right? That Guru Ted ended up with his own version of Jeet Kune. I think that's the silliest thing, that there are all these different versions. So part of the discussion was the discussion came out of the fact that in some places people put the name of the person in front of Jeet Kune Do. I don't do that. The only name I ever put in front of Jeet Kune Do is Bruce Lee, because Bruce Lee is the founder of Jeet Kune Do, and so like it annoys me that there is not more people in the world aware of the fact that Bruce Lee is the founder of Jeet Kune Do than there are people unaware of that fact. So every chance that I get, I will refer to it as Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. I don't see that there is a need to put anybody else's name in front of it. I think that we should do more to educate the public, let's say, right? That here's this guy, oh, here's his background. Here's this guy, here's his background. Here's this guy, here's his background. You don't have to put the guy's name in front of Jeet Kune Do. Now, that's just a Dwight Woods personal thing, right? There's no right or wrong. Some people might agree with me. Some people might disagree with me. I got no issues with that. I do it my way. You do it your way, and we can both exist. So why am I telling you all this? Oh, right, yeah. So because the guy talked about all the systems and whatever that he saw. So I had to explain to him that that's just my personal adventure, right, in Jeet Kune Do that took me down those paths, right? And then his other question was about belt system, because this is what he said to me. He said that when he went online doing a search about whether or not there are belts in Jeet Kune Do, he found yes and no. So I gave him my take on that, which, if you've heard it before, indulge me for a second. If belts work for you, then more power to you. Well, they might have worked for me. I just had no interest in it. I am very much into what makes Jeet Kune Do different. And one of the things that made Jeet Kune Do different was Bruce Lee's approach to the whole belt-in thing. But modern era, if that's what you think you have to do, then by all means go ahead and do it. I never did, and I'm fairly sure I never will. All right. But again, out there online, there's differences, right? And so people now become confused and what have you. So I think again, going back to what I was saying about action. So at some point we have to make sure that there is prolific information about Bruce Lee's approach to the ranking system. I mean, I think, as far as I remember, there's only been one article and that was 34 years ago about Bruce Lee and the ranking system, right? So I think that on an individual basis, a lot of us could probably do a lot more to bring that aspect of the Jeet Kune Do difference to greater light for the public, right? Okay, so I'm going to take a short break here and see what you guys have been trying. Oh, Richard says no class today. Okay, cool. All right, because it's Good Friday. I'm sorry. That makes sense then. So I'm going to try to see if I can find your comments on the big screen instead of the small screen, because I don't even know how to look at this stuff. All right, I got to go to the small screen. All right, so bear with me a second here, guys. Okay, Russell says the noodles take the strain out of the pad holder. It's similar to using boxing sticks. What the hell are boxing sticks? Use boxing sticks for social distancing and to still hold pads. What are boxing sticks? Is that like a stick with the focus mitt on the end of it or something? Nursing an elbow injury. Um, okay, all right, I get that, Russell. I still don't like them, right? Yeah, yeah. You know why? You know why? Because, and Russell's heard this phrase from me because he trained with me here in Miami for a while. So, Miami Jeet Kune phrase is feed the way you fight. If I'm holding two noodles and tapping at you like this, man, that's just like percussion practice. But when I hold a focus mitts like this, and when you hit, my hands hold in a way that's very closely related to my fighting position. When I swing at you in a way that's very closely related to the way I actually perform the technique. See, because what happens is, um, maybe it came from the boxing, where the boxing coach was not your training partner. The boxing coach is your coach. You see, so the boxing coach doesn't have to move the way you move. When people train with me, even if I'm not gonna, when the bell rings and we switch feeder, even if I'm not gonna do that, there's still just one way to feed. So in a martial arts setting, in a martial art class, both people are feeders and fighters. Both people are coaches and fighters. So you can't have one person holding the pads and then another one hitting the pads, but the holder doesn't move like a fighter. That doesn't make any sense to me. But if, like Russell's saying, nursing an elbow injury and what have you, okay, well, then that makes sense. But I still don't know what boxing sticks are, right? Mike Perez says, what piece of equipment is he using a unique, innovative way that's now used in again, Michael, I'm too old to keep up with with the new stuff. So to me, innovation was when Dan Anasano took the football blocking shield and converted that into what we now have as a kick shield. All right, that I talked about the other blocking shields that they used in football that they converted into the small kick shield. Piece of equipment in a unique, innovative way. I might have to think about that, Michael. But old people like me, our brains are slow, so we can't come up with stuff on the fly, right? 120 dummy, best training partner, but worst sparring partner. Ramon, that's funny, right? Nico says pummeling. Oh, that must have been when we were talking about energy drills and what have you. Yeah, so pummeling, my understanding of it and the little bit that I have trained in it is, so I should say this. So back in the old days, energy drills, one thing that they were called was generators. So you had this energy flowing the way a generator does, and then like here in South Florida, when hurricane time comes along, right? You have a generator out in the garage, and then you plug in different appliances. So in JKD, you had the generator, and then you could use that generator, that energy or sensitivity drill, to go off in different directions, which means to try different things. Pummeling, what I know about it is that pummeling seems to be limited to grappling techniques only. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong, but that's my understanding. But pummeling would fit into the overall picture. So you might have energy drills that are based on arm to arm contact, and then you move all the way past forearm and elbow and put it into body to body, right? And that's how you get the pummeling going, right? So, but it would still fall into the category of energy and sensitivity, right? With the MMA dummy, you use it for trapping and grappling, plus boxing, take your own right. Okay, cool. All right. Some guys like Chris Kent train in Kali while maintaining Jun Fan structure. Others like myself, PFS born and bred. I like that. PFS born and bred. That's a cool statement there, Curtis. Kind of blend empty hands. Why do you think that is? Kind of blend empty hands. Some guys like Chris Kent train in Kali while maintaining Jun Fan structure. Kind of blend empty hands. Well, if people in PFS blend empty hands, it's because of Paul Vunak. Paul Vunak would, so I'll tell you a story. So my first experience of Paul Vunak, 1983, instead of him coming out with a couple demonstration partners and doing stuff, he kind of turned it into a workshop. And so I remember this almost like it was yesterday. It started with catching the jab. And then against the cross, so it was like catch the jab and then parry the cross. And then it went catch, and the parry then became associated with the inward gunting. And then it was catch, inward gunting, right? Trap and back fist. And then it was catch, parry, trap and back fist, elbow. And then it was catch, parry, trap and back fist, elbow, back fist again, or whatever, right? And then at some point, that whole thing became gunting to back fist to lock the back fist, right? So that was a blend of Kali empty hands and Jun Fan empty hands, or JKD empty hands. And to me, that was like a Paul Vunak staple. So if you are PFS born and bred and blending empty hands, I would say that's where it came from. That came out of the mind of the inimitable Paul Vunak, right? I would say, Curtis. Okay. Nico, do you believe JKD has become stylized? In other words, it has to look a certain way. Yes and no. And this is related somewhat to what my good friend Mark Stewart asked. Mark asked, what do concepts folk get wrong about JKD, and what do original folk get wrong about JKD? And I think that in both instances, what they get wrong is the whole thing about looking a certain way. They think that you're supposed to imitate Dan Inosanto, or you're supposed to imitate Ted Wong as closely as you can, instead of realizing that Dan Inosanto and Ted Wong arrived at the points that they arrived at because of their own journey. So you're not supposed to copy them. It's not supposed to look a certain way. But now that whole thing about looking a certain way, when I say it's not supposed to look a certain way, it doesn't mean that I can do this and say, okay, this is now how I jab, because Jeet Kune can look however. That's stupid, right? The thing about looking a certain way is that you're not supposed to look like Bruce Lee. You're not supposed to look like Dan Inosanto. You're not supposed to look like Ted Wong, or whoever it is, whatever your source of JKD instruction or maybe even JKD inspiration is. That's not the idea. Now, that's not to say that if the person's way of doing things is considered exemplary, that you're not informed. Your way of doing things is not informed by that. You see? So at one point in your JKD development, you might think that you're supposed to copy, right? Right. So like, like if you do the outside reference point, right? And then you do Pak Da Sat Sao. If you try to copy Francis Fong, right? You just might end up with some really fast hands, you see. But if you, but don't take, but you wouldn't take it to the ridiculous point of trying to be exactly like Francis Fong. That wouldn't make any sense. But the way you do things in Pak Sao and Sut Sao could be informed by the way Francis Fong moves, right? To a certain point. So it's not that it's not that yeah. So you're not supposed to try to copy. But Jeet Kune Do, there are certain things in Jeet Kune Do that do have a look to them, Nico. But see, this is an interesting thing, because what I'm starting to realize is that in the JKD world, I don't know if it's maybe it's something that I am only just now becoming aware of, but it seems to be that people think that Jeet Kune Do is what you saw or heard about Bruce Lee doing. And today, you train that to preserve that. Well, no, you see, because Jeet Kune Do is organic, and so Jeet Kune Do is not only what Bruce Lee did. The idea, or one of the ideas of Jeet Kune Do, is to grow, right, with the times. So let's take the reference point, because that's something that comes up a lot, right? Especially when you have the trap-in discussion. So not that many people were aware of what I call the historical context. And if you hear anybody using the phrase historical context, they probably got it from me, right? People didn't understand what that was based on. It was based on throwing a lead, gaining the attachment, and then going around or going through that attachment. But when you stylized it in training, you would put you would touch the hands together and go from there. That appears to be like the classical Jeet Kune Do. And so people think that, okay, so we train the classical Jeet Kune Do because that's our heritage. But when it comes to being functional in the 21st century, it's not that stuff. It's something else. As opposed to understanding the principle behind trapping hands and determining the efficacy of trapping hands, where it fits in, when it fits in, how it fits in. So you'd have to make the decision whether or not trapping hands is something that you're going to ditch or not ditch, because as we know, it's reported that Bruce Lee in latter stage Jeet Kune Do moved away a little bit from the trapping hand stuff and did a whole lot of more mobility and striking stuff, whatever, right? I don't know. I still don't know exactly what to make of that. So if you determine that immobilization attack is still an efficient way of doing things, then you have to make sure that Jeet Kune Do training would require that you fit in with the way things are today. So it's not like, okay, when I do preservation art, I train that Jeet Kune Do stuff, but then I drop that completely, and now when I train in functional stuff, it has nothing to do with that. That seems to be a direction in which people are going, and that is whoa incorrect. Jeet Kune Do, to paraphrase Bruce Lee, to change with change is to change a state. Bruce Lee evolved during his lifetime concurrent with what was going on in his era. Therefore, his art, right, If you follow the path that he blazed, Jeet Kune continues to evolve with the current era. It's not a thing to be preserved as such. You can preserve certain aspects of it, right? Here's how they did it back in the old days. But you better be saying right after that, and here's how it's evolved into the new age, whether it was necessary for it to evolve or not, right? So who was I talking to about weaponry? Now I can't remember. Like I said, getting old. So anyhow, so yes, to a certain extent, Nico, JKD started becoming stylized a long time ago. And there are people, look, I should finish a statement, shouldn't I? Started becoming stylized a long time ago. And it's part, we could call that part of what Chris Kent calls the JKD identity crisis, right? I'll just say this last thing. Annoys me when I see young people, and Nico, you're not guilty of this, when I see young people kicking the way that Dan Inosanto kicks. Dan Inosanto is going to be 86 years old, right? So if you have been watching him kick for the past 15 years, right? If you've been watching Dan Inosanto, the way he moves and kicks since he was age 70, and you're copying that, then no, you need to go further back into the days of Jeet Kune and understand what kick delivery system should look like. You don't look at Dan Inosanto and go, okay, I'm going to move the way this 70-year-old man is moving. Now, I can understand if somebody thinks, oh, well, it's Dan Inosanto, he moves this way, he's Bruce Lee's premier disciple, I'll move that way. But no, something's missing. Something is missing in your understanding of what Jeet Kune is or what it should be. How much influence did, oh man, so we have talked about this, the influence of Jiddu Krishnamurti on Bruce Lee's thinking. Now, Krishnamurti, Bohemian dialogue be helpful in exploring and presenting JKD. I have no idea what Krishnamurti Bohemian dialogue might be, so I can't tell you. In terms of how much influence, yes, there are people who and there are people infinitely more qualified than I am to talk about this. There is an I Love Jeet Kune broadcast where we went into this a little bit. So Al, I will send you a link to that. But in a nutshell, how much influence? A ton, right? It's and Richard Torres could verify this. It is what led Bruce Lee to the whole no system, Jeet Kune not being a system. You know, when he started talking about that, the thing, maybe the idea of the truth being found outside of all set patterns, that type of thing, right? That's not a very good answer, Al. I'm sorry, but I'll send you the link to the podcast on that. Curtis again says, I see Chris Kent Guy's work Kali as a separate curriculum. In some ways, I feel it to be counterproductive regarding simplicity. However, when we seamlessly blend them, they say that is not JKD. Well, Kali is not JKD. JKD is not Kali. Now, can there be aspects of them that fit well together? And can you use one to help you improve the other? Yes. And might you do something and then somebody says, hey, what was that you just did? it worked pretty well. And then you stop and you think, you go, oh well, 20% of it was from Kali, and then the other 80% was from JKD or something like that. That could happen, but I think that when you see people when you see people having a separate curriculum, so it's like, this is my Jeet Kune class, this is my Kali class. What you might not see, because I know that because you didn't see it, it snuck its way in, because I had a way of sneaking it in, because our weekend classes were called review class. Today they're called review and refine class. But and it was a mixed level class. So that's how I was able to keep the lesser rank, the lower ranked students excited, because they got a glimpse of what was coming their way. And it was always explained to them, see, oh, you think this stuff is cool, but you can't do it. Why can't you do it? You can't do it because you haven't put the same amount of time in that your seniors have put in. So what's the answer to getting to the point where you can do the cool stuff that you see your seniors doing? Oh, you stick around and you train. Like it says on one of Cass Magda's shirts, right? Show up, don't quit. It's as simple as that. So those classes were where things happened. So it wasn't separate. During the week, separate, or whatever. On the weekend, go. What happens, happens. And it's based then on the things that you developed one at a time or in separate classes. And that's the problem. See, if you don't have, as a Jeet Kune instructor, if you want people to train in Kali, you want people to train, let's pick 3 arts. You want people to train in Kali, you want people to train in Muay Thai, you want people to train in, and I'll say Jun Fan in order to explain this. You want people to train in those things. Muay Thai, like for us, why did we have a Muay Thai program? Well, one, there were people who were only interested in Muay Thai. They were not interested in Jeet Kune or Kali. They were only interested in Muay Thai. So I wanted to be able to offer that to them. But 2, Muay Thai is an excellent cardiovascular conditioner, right? And so you put that in because you want everybody to have a fitness level. Now you also take the attitude of the Muay Thai people and you put that into what we call Jun Fan kickboxing. So that Jun Fan kickboxing, in case somebody was not interested in Muay Thai for cardiovascular conditioning, they'd still get cardiovascular conditioning in the Jun Fan kickboxing class, right? The Kali thing was there, again, for me, because Kali takes your coordination, your overall physical coordination to a very high level. It gives you answers for dealing with weaponry. And because it is an art that is focused on the cultivation of hand and body motion with or without a weapon, it lends, it gives skill to your, it brings skill to your overall way of moving. That's my approach to it. But if you don't have a way for your students to put it all together, then you're doing them a disservice. You see, right? Now, do they need to do Kali and Muay Thai? No, they can get what they want in the Jun Fan class, but it's not going to be the epitome of well-roundedness, because in the Jun Fan class, there is no weapons training. And if Jeet Kune is going to be about totality, as many people like to say, totality cannot exclude an aspect of self-defense. Totality cannot exclude weaponry, because weaponry, people use weapons against you, right? Now, somebody might say, yeah, they use guns, which is why some JKD people have gone in that direction as well. To change with change is the changeless state. Anyhow, so so as for Curtis, when they say that is not JKD, they're not incorrect, right? Um, but it depends on it depends on the context. It depends on how it's being expressed. And again, it's incorrect to say that Kali is JKD, that Muay Thai is JKD, that Savat is JKD. That's not true. That's never been true. And anybody who has said that has been wrong about it. You got to have a better way of explaining what it is that you're trying to say about that. Like I'm somebody who could tell people how to explain things. Okay. Don't talk about it, be it discussion, important, still sharing experience. Yes, we should all be hidden, intercepting. Yes. How depends on the individual, in my opinion. We should all be hidden and intercepting. Yeah, well, I mean, as much as you can. Everybody will have a different rhythm. Okay, well, it depends on the situation. Okay, so I don't think there is any more questions in here. All right, people are going off on okay. Lee Arroyo. What's your take on the crispy versus uncrispy mechanics mentioned in the Tao? If I'm not mistaken, Bruce listed uncrispy power in the pro columns of several arts. Well, let's see. Again, since I didn't train with Bruce Lee, right? Crispy to me means sharp, right? So there's certain ways of moving. Crispy, sharp, snappy, refined, that type of stuff. That's my take on what crispy is. Now, so it's like power, right? So there can be like a whipping power, right? Like a snapping power, and then there can be like this deep penetrative power, which might be a little bit slower. So crispy and uncrispy might refer to delivery speed, perhaps, Lee, right? I'm not the in-depth scholar of the Tao, right? Like other people might be. Wink, wink. So those things. That's my take on it, as refined as that might have been, right? Many believe they have to look like Bruce Lee. Yeah, maybe they do. Maybe they're okay. So I can't find. I'm just gonna skim through here. If I miss a question, guys, it's because okay. So you guys are just having a discussion then about stuff. Nobody's asking any more question. Back in the day, yeah, whatever. I don't see any question marks. So Jose Fraguas. Oh my gosh, long time. So if you guys don't know who Jose Fraguas is, Jose and I met in 1984, I think, at the world famous California Martial Arts Academy in St. Louis, Missouri. And Jose was I think at the time he was still living in Spain, and he was a magazine guy there, and then he moved here, and he's been in magazines. He is the guy behind Martial Arts Masters, I think is what it's called. But we've been out of touch for a long time. He is the author of Jeet Kune Conversations. If you guys are familiar with that book, that's who Jose Fraguas is, right? Okay, so you guys are having your own discussion here. Aubrey says, how does Jun Fan kickboxing differ from just kickboxing? Okay, so Junfan kickboxing is a thing. So okay, let's see. American kickboxing. American kickboxing is a thing that grew out of um, a more, let's call it, relaxed way of kicking, not quite like karate kicking, blended with boxing hands. Muay Thai as a kickboxing art. Major tool in Muay Thai is the rear kick. Major weapons in Muay Thai are from the rear. Junfan kickboxing is the Bruce Lee approach, or the Bruce Lee approach to kicking and punching, influenced by theories of strong side forward and lead weapon being dominant. You see? So this is where I differ from a lot of my colleagues, because too many of them use standard or traditional kickboxing. So like I just explained to you, in Thai boxing, rear elbow, rear knee, rear round kick, those are the major tools. In JKD, major tools are what? Lead hand, lead leg. So Junfan kickboxing puts the power side forward, and the emphasis is on the lead weapon, the development of the lead tool. But it's still a kickboxing flavor. And I differentiate between Junfan kickboxing, because Junfan, so back in the days, and I know I keep skipping, but it's the way my brain works. Back in the days of Pencak Silat, the mother art, so to speak, was Sarak. And things like Bukti Nagara, Tongkat, Ratu Duri or Ratu Adil, and then there was another one that I can't remember. They were considered like carrier systems, right, for the mother art. So to me, Junfan kickboxing this is how I broke it down at my school. Junfan kickboxing is entry level Jeet Kune, because you have to develop impeccable control over your own center of gravity. So you learn to develop impeccable control over your own center of gravity by kicking and punching, by moving around dynamically. It sets a base level of fitness, because if you're pumping the four limbs, the arms and the legs, it is similar to going out there and doing some road work. So to establish a base level, right, of fitness, kickboxing is entry level. Plus two, everybody knows what a kick is. Everybody knows what a punch is. So you start people with what they know, with what they're familiar with, and you build from there. Junfan Gung Fu is now, if we're going up the skill ladder, right? So we have kicking, we have punching, we have trapping, we have grappling. So Junfan Gung Fu now has a Wing Chun influence, and that's where the skill, such like trapping, would be introduced, right? And so it's just levels of development taking you to the ultimate level, which is Jeet Kune. So that's how Junfan kickboxing differs from regular kickboxing. So when you see people working a lot of stuff and they go cross, hook, cross, and they don't realize that they could have gone with the lead hand first before the cross, then they're not applying JKD principle and theory to their kickboxing. So that's where I differ a little bit in that, Aubrey. So it has nothing to do with chicken wings. Lee. Oh, crispy. Oh man, did I fall for that? Lee, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right. Terry says, if you do chisao, should you include weapons like knife and pummeling? My good friend Sean Rudy, I watched the video, but I only watched it once. It's actually something I would have to go back to. But Sean does a thing about using the dagger in Wing Chun. I think in the Bong Sao Lap Sao drill or something. So it would be interesting, Terry, to put the knife in. Now, so we're talking about CMAA 1984 when Jose Fraguas and I met. In 1984, I'm pretty sure it was 84. I could be wrong. It might have been 85. But there was a time where, in order to show how things worked in concert or in conjunction with each other, in demonstration, right, you could go from harmonious spring to danchi to hubud to chisao to rolling hands and back and forth or whatever, right? So pummeling could be put in there, right? So it's like in the stick work, Terry, where we can go from largamano, then go to tabon, and then go from tabon to puño, and the whole break out, break in, break up, break down stuff, right? So I could see somebody starting out here at chisao range, right, and moving into pummeling, and then coming all the way back out. It would be an interesting thing to do. And if people experimented with it and found out that it delivered something in terms of efficiency, then more power to them. So yeah, so you could include weapons and pummeling, right? Jose says it was 1984. Okay, all right, okay. So that's everything from the comments. All right, let me just make sure that okay, that might be the dudette telling me it's time to get off the machine. Just wondering, can't really, okay. I think that's everything. I think I covered, yeah, all right. So I'll just say one more thing, because I'm looking at my notes here, right? That both seem to think that copying, but yeah, all right. So I'm just going to tell you this again. I was thinking about this the other day. Most of you guys are probably too young to have seen or to have received your copy of your subscription. But it was years ago, and I'm pretty sure it was in Inside Kung Fu, that they used to do a thing like Ask the Masters. So they'd have 5 guys, and they would ask them a question about whatever. All right, I'll tell you 2 stories about this. One issue, part of the question was, how long does it take to get a black belt in your system or in your art or whatever? And I remember that Sifu Nasano's answer was 10 years. Now, here's what's funny about that, right? There are morons who will see that and go, oh, look, Dan Nasano is talking about black belts in Jeet Kune, as opposed to realizing, well, you're in a magazine office with a martial art magazine office where 99% of the people probably use belts in their system, but you don't. So you just go with the flow, and right? So you ask Dan Nasano, how long does it take to get a black belt in your system? When Dan Nasano says 10 years, what he's saying is that with us in the JKD clan, it takes about 10 years to get to a rudimentary level of understanding, right? See, because here's another thing that people used to say about Jeet Kune back in the 80s when Jose Fraguas and I met, that Jeet Kune was like a university graduate course, right? And you guys have heard the stories about black belts that would come to the Kali Academy and get their butts handed to them by people who had been training at the Kali Academy for 6 months, right? Why? Because back then, what was being done at the Kali Academy was based on practicality and functionality. And so that put people with 6 months ahead of people who might have spent years in training stuff that was not based on practicality and functionality, right? So that was one thing I wanted to tell you. The other thing, there was a second story I was going to tell you about Sifu Dan. And now it just went straight out of my head, right? Because that's what happens when you start to age. So anyhow, and I'll talk about this probably, if not next week, the week after in the broadcast. But it's becoming a little bit concerning for me that there's now this thought that you can only say that you do Jeet Kune if you do the old stuff, right? If you are training to survive, to be functional in the modern era, then you don't call what you're doing Jeet Kune. That's a disconnect, which I shall address at some point in the near future. And that's all I got to say for this video, right? So I'm going to go through the comments once I disconnect, guys, and see if there's anything that I think you guys were having your own conversation and ignoring me, which is fine. Right? So I'll look through that. If there's anything else that you want to ask about, feel free to put it in comments, and I'll go through that. There was a little bit of hiccup, and so I can't tell you who's going to be on this time next week with me, but as soon as I get that fixed and confirmed, I will let you guys know. So you know what to do. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods, on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods, at paypal.me. Let me pull it up here for you. paypal.me/UnifiedMA Miami. Probably the only Jeet Kune autobiography in existence, right? Jeet Kune Journey Volume 1, the raw but edited PDF version. PayPal.me, Unified MA Miami, and what else do I have to tell you about? I think that's it. Yeah, we'll make that it for today. So you guys have a great weekend. Hope everything is normalizing in your part of the world and people are not becoming crazy again with this whole lockdown nonsense that I keep hearing about. Right, so enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Until next time, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off. Talk soon.